This one is mostly tears because this 54-year-old legend survived a car crash only to be locked away for 27 years. Now, I've been asked to do some special restorations in the past, but this one is personal. This is a Longines Chronograph from the 1972 Munich Olympic Games. It was donated by a kind doctor to raise funds for an autistic child in Gaza who desperately needs our help. The irony of this watch's history is not lost on me, but today we're focusing on the future, so let's restore some hope. Greetings, good people, and a very warm welcome to you all. Now, this piece was created to commemorate the 1972 Olympics in Munich, an event that is usually meant to celebrate peace and unity amongst nations, but one that ended in tragedy. But today, this rare and collectible piece has a new mission. Dr. Peter from Blyth handed me this watch with one goal: fix it, sell it, and change a child's life. No pressure, right? Let's see what 50 years of history looks like under the bonnet. She looks pretty unassuming from the top, doesn't she? But we know she's hiding her true beauty. And she's ticking away after a few wines and doesn't look too bad on the timer either. But listen to her heart. Sounds like rain dripping on a tin roof, and that's because she's bone dry. Now, there was an engraving on the watch, which may be the original owner. The doctor acquired the watch in the strangest manner. In 1999, he was involved in a serious car accident as someone crashed into him at the lights. The car was totaled, and as he was clearing out the wreckage, he found the watch. He couldn't locate the original owner, and the watch was too small for him and didn't work correctly, so he just left it in a drawer for the last 27 years. So this thing hasn't even seen the light ever since, which is bad enough because you don't see a Valjoux 236 every day. It's such a beautiful movement, and dare I say it, but also a simple one for a chronograph. And opening this rugged functional case and finding this movement inside is like finding a Ferrari engine in a tow truck. The case just doesn't match the engine, in my humble opinion. Now here I'm just adding a bit of penetrating oil to loosen up that driving wheel. The beautiful engine in a not so beautiful case was all to do with function over form. Longines was a big timing force at the 72 games, and these devices weren't just timekeepers, they were instruments of trust. They could be the difference between making or breaking a world record. Referees and officials using stopwatches didn't have time to fumble around with two buttons in this high stakes environment. So the monopusher was the perfect choice. One press to start, one press to stop, and one press to reset. And all from the same button without having to take your eye off the main event. So I suppose this commemorative piece is a tribute to the official stopwatches used at the games in a wristwatch form. So now a DC, just a normal movement, isn't it? Manual wind. Now 72 was a real turning point. You see, digital timing had already made its debut in Mexico in 68, and even Seiko had been playing with quartz clocks back in 64. And even though the 72 Olympics had adopted some digital timekeeping, this was really the final hurrah for the mechanical chronograph as the primary tool of the trade. It was the end of an era where these brass wheels and steel springs were still the heart and soul of the games, before the digital revolution truly took the driver's seat. So this Valjoux 236 represents the last gasp of an era where a series of brass wheels and steel springs were responsible for determining who was the fastest human on Earth. Something kind of poetic about that, isn't it? I mean, the watch was built to commemorate the peak of human potential, only to be buried in a wreckage of a car crash. And in its 50+ year history, it has spent more time as a lost object than as a watch. But now it's on my bench, and we are bringing it back, not just to tell the time, but to help a poor child reach his potential and write his own story. It's a second chance for the watch, and a much needed first chance for him. Self-lubricating my... It's bone dry. So how is something self-lubricating? Does it have sweat glands like my oily face? I know they used Teflon coatings and miracle treatments back then, but as you can see, even miracles dry out after 50 years. Right, so here are all the parts laid out. Nothing was damaged or worn out, which isn't surprising considering she's been hiding all these years. So let's give her a nice spa treatment and get her all cleaned up. This poor old girl hasn't had much joy in her life, so let's just let her soak for a bit, and hopefully she will feel rejuvenated and ready for a new life. And while her soul is being cleansed, let's tidy up her body. Now then, just as the movement didn't give us any hurdles to jump over, this case should also be an easy sprint. This plexiglass has a tension ring, so some waterproofing must have been considered by Longines, and this definitely looks like a scar from the crash of '99. So we'll tidy that up and reuse it. Now although the front of the case has that rugged industrious feel about it, the sides have a more civilian friendly shine to it. I usually go to town when it comes to case restorations, but since this is a historic piece that survived a car crash, followed by 27 years of solitary isolation, I don't want to disturb that bead blasted finish, as I don't have the gear to reapply that finish, but we will just tidy everything up in the most sympathetic manner possible. And these O-rings also tell us that the watch, being a tool watch, did definitely have a waterproof rating. And even though the sympathetic polishing on this will only take a few minutes, to do a good job we need to remove all the obstructions on the case, such as the crown and pusher tubes. I also need to try and reuse these parts, as the exact genuine parts are not available for this piece. So to make sure it's not a struggle and I don't shear or shred the parts, I melt away any thread lock that may have been used at the factory. So you see we have this top surface, which is sort of a bead blasted finish. The sides are polished, so you can tidy up the sides, get rid of those surface marks. And I don't have a proper way to reapply that, so I'm going to leave that. The plexiglass as well, clean that up. And then this as well, we'll just tidy it up a little bit. The engravings there, so maybe Mr. Arthur might see this video and want to buy it himself for a good cause, so we'll give a circular grain on that. So to protect that bead blasted finish on the front surface of the case, I'm adding some protective lacquer, and while that dries, Mr. Trouble with his alien fingers, which he inherited from another alien I know, will be helping us with this plexiglass. Now there are plenty of ways to skin this cat, as I've demonstrated in previous videos, but if you're gentle and patient, then you can speed up the process by doing it on a powerful machine. Really? Go on, carry on. If you don't have the delicate touch of Trouble, then you can end up melting this piece of plastic, but we're in good hands. And Trouble desperately wanted to help this autistic child in Gaza, because his little brother Germ is also the same, so I couldn't refuse his help. For the sides of the case, I try to use a more controlled method to get rid of those deep blemishes. The loose folds on a mop would wrap the case and start polishing the bead blasted finish, so I saved the mop for last just to give it that final gleam with a couple of passes. There we go, didn't try to be too smart or anything, just a little clean up, and then we'll fill these markers back up. From the front, looks just the same as before. We've managed to maintain that bead blasted finish, but on the sides, look, tidied it up, looks nice. Same with the back, you can see we haven't removed everything, just a little tidy up. The glass needed some scratch removal and Trouble did that for us. Thank you, Mr. Trouble, looks alright. Now then, being a commemorative piece, naturally this piece has lots of commemorating on the case back. So to fill the missing paint on the case back, instead of paint I'm using a 2-part modelling epoxy. When this stuff dries, it is very durable. Once I fill the infills, I wet the surface a little bit with some water and then gently wipe away the mess, and voila! Right, parts are all clean and some treated with a special epilam coating, so let's put this old girl back together. But first I'll start with the sub-assemblies, such as the winding gear tucked beneath the quarter plate, and we'll get the mainspring back into its barrel. That is so cool, look at the way that spring hugs the apple bottom curves of that clip. See, that is cool. And then we just clean up. Now whoever designed this meat and 2-veg crown wheel setup did it for a reason. Even though it fits in any orientation, it needs to go in a specific way. It needs to be on this side, otherwise the minute wheel counter is not going to come through. And I realised this way down the line and had to rectify it. Now in a standard service, you'd swap the mainspring out for a fresh one without a second thought. It's cheap insurance and good practice. But this isn't a standard service, this is a survivor. Just think about that. This muscle has been under tension since Munich 72 and survived a wreck in 99. So if it's still healthy and flat and still has the willpower, then I want to keep that DNA in there. It's the original life force and energy that powered this legend 50 years ago. When I first received this watch from Dr. Peter, the orange hand was still hanging on, but she just didn't want to play. Bloody throw it in, why don't you? It wouldn't reset to 0, and after a few tries on the mono pusher, the hand just gave up. It collapsed onto the dial. It was as if she just wanted to go back to sleep for another 27 years. We also saw her limping at the start, but I wish you could have felt it. The winding was rough, like chewing sand. Every strike on that column wheel felt jarring, and that tinny heartbeat we heard, that was the sound of a legend running on empty. You see, on a movement like this, the tolerance is incredibly tight. When that oil turns to varnish over 5 decades, you aren't just playing with metal, you're bruising it and hurting it. By cleaning her sole, I've removed that friction. Once she's lubricated and back together, every interaction of that column wheel has to be crisp, a decisive snick. The winding should feel smooth yet meaty, and her heart, I want her to sound like she's in love again. So I'm adding some thick grease on the keyless works, and these are high friction parts. So this should help us achieve a nice smooth winding and setting. And remember, even though I'm old as dirt, these parts are older than me. So the stem, winding pinion and sliding pinion are all in, and they're all having a little celebratory hug. There isn't a post there, so I think I'll just put a little bit here. You'll notice a lot of parts sitting freely on the main plate without any post to steady them, so there are a lot of shouldered screws. So I make sure to oil the main plate beneath the part, whereas usually we'd have a post to oil, and I also oil the shoulders on the screw because it's easier than oiling the part itself, which wants to moonwalk every time I try to oil it. Cheaper movements use this method to save on costs by eliminating extra posts, saving on material and machining costs, but the 236 didn't adopt this method to save on cost. It inherited this design from its father, the legendary Valjoux 23, which was debuted in 1916. And was in production until 1974. That's crazy. But according to some sources, high-grade chronographs use this method for the exact opposite reason as cheap movements, allowing master watchmakers to micro-adjust every lever for absolute zero wobble precision. Oh, okay. The base movement is complete, but will she kick over? Easy, girl. Ooh, that felt like a strong kick. I'm going to precisely oil the pallet fork, and I'm hoping that will help with the tinny tick and tock we heard at the start. And now the moment of truth. Now that heartbeat looks really strong, and it sounds like love music, maybe a bit of Prodigy. Look at the big fat shoulder on the shouldered screw. Magnus for Magnuson. So she looks really happy and healthy on the timer. So now let's build a chronograph on this good foundation. So you see this cool little contraption at the end of this operating lever. And that's probably how you get everything done with one button. Hey, we have a post. And it doesn't actually sit over the post. It just sits on top of it for some reason. So we'll just oil the top here. And that's why we have another shouldered screw. Do you see how it wants to go all over the place on top of that? My hands are shaking today, 'cause my blood sugar is so low. Let's just move that out of the way. This one's got a couple of guide pins. We'll get the little screw in first and then engage it. There you go. Now every single part, including all these springs and jumpers and levers, are so well made and robust. And I suppose since there are so many eccentrics which act as posts in a way, so the absence of actual posts doesn't really seem like some money saving exercise after all. Oh, the impact of that floppy wristed operating lever on that column wheel sounds and feels much better now that I've applied some blue goo. And I will lubricate various surfaces of this wheel as I go along and observe where each part comes into contact with the various teeth and surfaces on this heavy duty part. And seeing the driving wheel and the coupling wheel having a little synchronous kiss as they twirl gives me a lot of confidence that everything's gonna be okay. Next we got our little baby elephant. Now the monopusher is a bit of a posh rarity, and the Valjoux 236 had very low production numbers because the quartz crisis was just around the corner, so it was my first time working on a 236, but I have to say, I thought this being a chronograph that's been a hermit for 27 years would be a bit of a moody git and give me all sorts of trouble. But it's been an absolute joy to work on this piece. There was no arguing and we didn't fight each other at all. It's like she's been waiting for me to just guide all these parts back home. It's a bit of a relief really, because with the Gaza mission on the line, the last thing I needed was a headache. But instead, it's been like a nice chat with an old pal. And we've got some spooky spaghetti. Ooh. See what I mean? Doesn't want to come off. Be like Germany's separation anxiety. Now, before I put the face on this legend and get it cased up, if you're enjoying seeing this rare Olympic bird come back to life, then do us a favour and hit that subscribe button. We're doing all this to help a young lad get a start in life, and every bit of support from you good people helps us do more of these missions. And now that all the oils have had some chance to settle, this is what it looks like on the timer. With his hand, you can see this one's lost a bit of lume. Glow's also gone. That's painted black, that's painted white, so I don't want to risk getting that into the ultrasonic, so we'll scrape it off. Now I have all sorts of colours and tints to recreate that decayed look of the lume, and I have done this in the past. The lume on this piece is tritium, which would have originally been a slightly off-white colour with a bright green glow, which has just decayed over time and turned into this browny orange colour and lost its glow. And we've got a little glow. And it's absolutely okay to mimic that old tinted look, but I just feel like this watch would like the world to know that she's had some treatment. A fresh start and a new chapter in her life waiting to be written. Call me a soppy old git, but that's why I've gone for a standard green lume with green glow. And this may divide our horology clan into two groups, and that's okay too. We are allowed to have different taste buds. And the dial feet screw are on the movement and not on the sides. Just be careful that you don't hit an eccentric or something by mistake, because you don't really want to be messing around with these eccentrics, because they're very eccentric and also have an opinion. Moment of truth. Let's see what happens. Ooh, now if she doesn't snap back to zero, then all those hours and all those tears were for nothing. There you go. It may have been a hammer that hit that cam, but she's as precise as the stiletto. Spread it round. Now we're not just fitting parts here, we're creating a seal against time itself. This is the only thing standing between that pristine Valjoux and the sweat, dust and moisture of the outside world. And I know at this point in a project we are all desperate to jump to the finish line, but if we don't get this right, then the next few years before her next service interval won't be nearly as kind to her. Now with her new green lume, she's ready to tell the world that she's had a midlife makeover. But I also wanted to give her a full wardrobe to test out. She's been through the wars, so I thought she deserved more than just one look. From the classic elegance of leather to the rugged mission-ready feel of NATO. So I will be trying out various straps, so don't leave too early. And there she is, 54 years of history, a high-speed wreck, and nearly 3 decades of silence. And now she's beating stronger than ever. But this isn't just about a beautiful movement. It's about a beautiful future for a young lad in Gaza. I will be accepting offers for this little beauty, and you'll find my email in the descriptions. So let's show the world what the Nekkid watchmaker community is all about. Thank you all so much for being a part of this mission. Take care friends, and take care of each other. Peace, love and blessings to you all, and if the Almighty wills, I'll see you on the next one. Tra!